hit continue message. Right, so just a little mini course on securing our devices. So what we're going to cover here is why do we need to secure our devices? Let me know if you can't hear me. Should be unmuted and everything. So why do we need to secure our devices? What are the best practices for securing our Cisco devices? And of course, the balance between security and usability. Right, so first, why do we need to secure our devices? Depending on how our devices are configured, people around the world may be able to access our devices remotely. Through this remote access, these malicious actors may be able to modify our configurations and sniff user data, redirect traffic as they please, lock us out, or wreak havoc in any number of ways. These devices are usually used to provide critical services in our enterprises, and any interruption in operation is likely to generate a ton of disruption in business processes. So just as a backdrop, in many of the routers that I've managed that have public IPs, usually if you put any service like the SSH port on port 22 or the telnet port on port 23, you realize there are lots of automated scripts from China and from Russia just constantly trying to brute force their way into your devices. So basically, they're looking for standard configurations. So people who just plug in a cable into their router and leave their default passwords and their default usernames configured on the device. These scripts will try to brute force into you and SSH or telnet into the device, and then lock you out or brute force anything they want. Some of them will use your machine as a client to do this denial of service attacks around the world. They may just try to sniff your data and look for credit card information. Or they might just use it to spread and look for other devices inside your network. So because of our important role as network engineers or as security engineers, we need to treat with these malicious actors properly. So of course, these devices also usually carry very sensitive data within the enterprise, which could decimate a business by being leaked outside. And of course, these devices are usually incredibly expensive, meaning that any damages to them will result in a lot of lost capex for the company and a lot of lost opex in recovering these losses. So if somehow someone is able to log into the device and switch off the fan, for example, and then the device overheats and dies, that's a lot of lost capex, right? That might be $1 million US just die or dead or lost because somebody was able to hack into your device and get remote access and then shut down your fans. So we need to secure our devices very well. We need to secure devices a lot and make sure you secure your devices before putting it on a public IP. That's the gist of this whole course here. So what are the best practices for securing our devices? Before we begin to think about configuration security, we need to consider physical security in our devices. If an attacker is able to physically access our device using a console cable or a USB cable, any way they can physically get to the device, they can reset the password as they desire and reconfigure the device. Most devices are therefore kept in secure, locked cabinets or racks or data centers. And they may be locked in multiple places here. And this is why, right? That related to the whole CAPEX issue there, if somebody is able to physically pick up your device and carry it away, it's not much use to you, right? Because you lost the device. So even if it was super secure, it had SSH, it had a very long passphrase or a long password. If somebody picked this up and carried it out the door, then you lost the device anyway. It didn't matter. So you'll see this is just one example of how you could secure your device in an office. So you see these holes in the back here. These are made to drill into the wall and then put in some roll bolts, so some very giant screws to hold up, 100 or 200 or 500 pounds of weight, however much these routers and switches might weigh, and then make it very difficult for an attacker to come in and pull out this thing from the wall. So that's the first bit of security there, by putting in these things and securing them properly. And then the other one is this. So if we close our doors and we make sure this equipment inside is properly ventilated and properly spaced like this, so that we can close this door safely, and then lock this, and we put the keys away somewhere. So we have at least two ways to ensure physical security of our devices. And we don't just have this switch lying around on the floor, like it's not actually worth, $1,000 or $2,000 US dollars, so that somebody could just come and pick it up and carry it away. In this case, now they need to somehow pry this lock and then unscrew this or pull out this entire thing from the wall. So we at least make it more difficult for them, and we give ourselves more time to pick them up on a camera, or for a security guard to see them or hear noise, right? So our next step should be to secure administrative access to our device. There are three ways that users can connect to our Cisco devices: using the console port on the device, using the auxiliary port, which is a console-like port for emergency access using the modem, and then using the VTY ports for Telnet or SSH. So depending on the iOS version, no passwords may be required by default. It's therefore our job to ensure that passwords are always required for login and that we disable access that isn't required. So on certain Cisco devices, we may have more than three methods here. So these are the three we usually want to leave, right? But we may have HTTP and HTTPS access through our web server that's built into the Cisco device. In newer Cisco devices, you might have API access that might allow another program to pull JSON data or push configurations to our devices. And if we're not using these newer features, then we want to disable them, right? So for example, if we're not planning to use this aux port, we might want to see if that could be disabled. Or if for some reason we only want to manage this with a console port and we don't want to use Telnet or SSH at all, we might want to disable all these UTY ports. Or more commonly, if we don't plan to use Telnet, because we shouldn't, then we want to disable Telnet access entirely to our device and only leave console and SSH access, because that's a very common setup. So this we know what the console cable looks like. So usually you want to leave your console cable access open, just in case something really bad happens and you need to rush upstairs or rush to the data center and fix something in your device. And usually SSH is the main method of access in your Cisco devices right now. In the newer devices, you might see APIs and you might see web servers being used, but SSH is still the most popular one. But of course, Telnet, we said, should never be using Telnet. So we want to disable that method of configuration and reduce that attack surface on our device. Now, note that we can simply set local passwords for all of these login methods. So we could do line console 0, password, whatever, and the login command. We mentioned this in the security section. We can use this password keyword. It is still a valid way to configure our devices. Just use this password keyword and put this login command, and you will be able to get into your device. Or we could expand on this with usernames and passwords and the login local command. But of course, we said we can and we should use secrets instead of passwords with the username command as well. So we have username remote, password access, username Scott, password wolf, or username Scott secret wolf, right? And we said we don't like this because it prints out your password in plain text format. So anyone who is able to shoulder surf and watch over your shoulder could see the password plainly shown here. Or if they were able to do a show run on the command line, they would be able to see your password here. So we always want to use that secret command instead of this password here. And it's the same thing with this password here and this login. We want to use this command here instead, login local, to actually check this username and our secret command instead of these local passwords and these username and passwords here, because those are less secure than the username and secrets combination. So once we log into the device, by default, we are brought into user exec mode. To get into user privilege mode, we need to use the enable password or the enable secret commands. With the older enable password command, we create a plain text password by default. With the new enable secret command, we create a password that is immediately hashed with a salted MD5 hash, which is very difficult to crack. We can, however, hide plain text passwords weakly using the service password encryption command. So remember, we went through that and I showed you it is more difficult to read, but it's still easy to decrypt using any number of online services. Note that you could put both commands into it. You could put enable password and enable secret. But if you put both, the enable secret takes precedence over it. So of course, if somebody does a show run and they able to see this password word here, and they tried to use this enable password test, it wouldn't accept it because we have an enable secret of Cisco. So only Cisco would be accepted here. Yeah. So always use enable secrets and use usernames and secrets instead of passwords. So service password encryption attempts to encrypt our password weakly. So here we could use this service password encryption command. And you see here, this is obviously more difficult to read than this here. But you could just copy and paste this and throw it into our website, and it will spit out the plain text version of it very quickly. So several tools, such as this one here, can easily crack these weakly encrypted passwords. So here, encrypted password, decrypted password, very easily. Now, another important tool is the message of the day banner. Even though it does not provide any security in itself, it provides clear evidence in court that a person who was warned, to not enter the device. So no one is gonna, well, no, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, so I'm not gonna call any nationalities. But no hackers are gonna get into your router and read this banner and then say, hey, this person put in a banner, I should not enter this device. And that's what a lot of engineers think, right? They think the banner is a waste of time because anybody who wants to get into the device won't read this command, won't read this banner and say, hey, I shouldn't get into this device, this said not to enter. But what this banner really is supposed to be is admissible, is clear evidence in court, basically. So in court, somebody could argue that the banner said, welcome to this device, so welcome to Cisco router R1. So they interpreted that as a message that they should enter the device. And it sounds stupid, but things in court very debatable. But as long as you have a clear message saying unauthorized access could result in termination, only employees of CFSI are allowed to access and configure this router, then you just need to print out that configuration and you have clear evidence in court that whoever got into your router was not authorized because you had this banner message of the day printed in your terminal. And I know this method is kind of messy, and we had a lot of problems with it in the lab. So yeah, it won't matter in the real world as long as you get the message in between the two characters correct. Just start and end with the same character. So just make sure you test it and you have a good banner. And usually in big companies, you'll have a legal team to work with this. So you tell them, look, on all my devices, I need to have something that's very useful in court and, well, can cover us in court. So write out something, write out a short paragraph for me, and I will put in that command into the router. And you work with the legal team and you get a good template for this. So this is just a simple example, but for legal teams, you want to get something much more robust because any small hole means that somebody could walk free. Now, the default privilege levels are 1 and 15, with level 1 being user exec mode and level 15 being user privilege mode. We can utilize these default privilege levels to control what features or commands users have access to. We can also create additional privilege levels 2 to 14 to add custom commands for users. So between this 1 and this 15, which is kind of the two extremes, you could create different levels to add custom commands for users. So just as an example, you could use privilege exec level 7, and you could put in the commands you want to allow here. So level 7, which is not level 1 or not level 14, but is something kind of in the middle, is allowed to run ping commands, show startup config commands, show IP routes, and show IP in brief, just as an example. And then if you want to go to this level 7, you need to use this secret word here. And then instead of just typing enable, you type enable 7. They're saying instead of just jumping straight to 15, I want to jump to 7. And how you enforce this is you only give the person this password. So you tell them, look, I have given you these commands. If you want to go to the level where you can run these commands, type in enable 7 and use this password. And then you show that they could only run these commands and they can't go and change any router, anything in your router that could let them break anything. Yeah. So this limits the commands that users have access to, even in privilege mode. Remember that instead of local databases of users on each switch or router, we can also use AAA services to store credentials on Radius or TACAX Plus servers. We can also utilize dictionaries on these Radius or TACAX servers to assign the same privilege levels to users. So we don't need to go in and configure this on every single router or every single switch. These Radius and TACAX Plus AAA servers have methods of putting this in on their databases so that whoever we associate with this level 7 will have access to these commands across the entire network. This is just one example of doing it local to the device. Now, by default, anyone with physical access to a Cisco device can use the password recovery feature to access the device. So basically, if you have physical access to a device, you could just plug in your console cable, reboot the device and press the correct button. Usually it's just a little button in front of the switch if it's a Cisco switch. And then you get a special prompt at your command line. And you could use this special thing called the password recovery to enable, even if you don't have the password, you could get into the device using this password recovery feature. So you could put in a command, no service password recovery, and you could prevent this on your device. If the password recovery feature is disabled, so if you put in this command, the entire device configuration then needs to be wiped, which ensures that any sensitive information on the device is lost to the attacker. So if somebody tries this method and they try to do password recovery feature, they will still be kind of able to do it, but the entire device config will be wiped to do this. So they'll say, look, you can't do this and you can't recover your password, but you won't get the password. You'll just get back access to the device and your whole configuration will be lost. Are you sure you want to proceed? So this makes sure that any sensitive information on the device is lost to the attacker. So you could use this if there's a small chance, you're putting a switch out in the open and out in rogue territory, and there's a small chance that somebody may steal the switch. You want to put this to make sure that all of your secret IPs and your usernames and whatever else on your running config will be lost if they try to reset that switch to sell it on the black market. Now, you should always disable or shut down unused physical ports on your devices. This ensures that no rogue agents are able to connect into your devices, and also ensures that you can place descriptions and proper documentations for new devices that are being connected. So there's two advantages it gets by doing this, right? One is that if you have a switch in the open and somebody just comes and plugs in a cable to see what they can do, nothing will happen. Because the switch is shut down, they won't get any sorts of signals, they can't Wireshark into it, they can't try to brute force anything, because they won't get a physical signal from that cable, right? It'll just be a copper cable going to a blank port on the switch or on the router. So that's one big advantage. The second thing is you kind of helping yourself, because if you need to run a cable or you need to connect something new, that port will be shut down. So you'll need to log into the device and you'll need to do a no shot on that port. And hopefully when you do that no shot, you'll remember you also need to put in an interface description to remind yourself in the future what is connected to which port. Now you should also ensure that any unused services on your devices are disabled. Common services not often used are the HTTP and HTTPS service. So to fix this, you use the no IP HTTP server and no IP HTTP secure server commands. If you have a port facing an untrusted location, you may also want to disable CDP or LLDP service using the no CDP enable command. So LLDP is, I'm missing an L here, but LLDP is disabled by default. Remember we mentioned that in layer 2 discovery protocols, but CDP is enabled on everything by default. So if we have a port facing somewhere untrusted, like we have a switch going out into a rogue location, and we don't want people mapping back our inside network there, we want to disable CDP on that port facing out. So for remote access, remember that we should always use SSH, or we should prefer SSH over Telnet, as SSH provides encrypted communications with remote users. So remember the commands we went through. You had to put a host name, you had to put a domain name, you had to use this crypto key generate RSC command and make sure this is greater than 768. And we could put some IP SSH commands. We could put IP SSH version 2. We could put up a source interface if we need to. We could set a timeout. We could set our authentication retries. You see the IP SSH version 2 there. And then we could put The bottom there, yeah, transport input SSH. So only allow SSH from our BTY terminals and not allow telnet. So as we keep saying, always use SSH over telnet. Now for switch ports, remember that we should never use the default VLAN in a production environment. We should create an unused black hole VLAN and assign that to be our native VLAN on any trunk ports. We should also configure these trunk ports statically and not use this thing called dynamic trunking protocol, and only use trunk ports when necessary. So these were just good VLAN design tips that we had back in the layer 2 section. So this default VLAN, which is what all switch ports use by default, it is useful to just plug in two things into a switch and know that you could get communications across it, but it's also very risky, right? Because it means that any switch that you default will have access to whatever ports you leave in the default VLAN. So somebody could default a switch and get access to something else that you connect to a default VLAN down the line. So we should always create a random black hole VLAN like 666 and put all our ports in that black hole VLAN, and also put that special thing called the native VLAN on that black hole VLAN, so that we show that all the ports that we put into production environments were specifically made for that port. So if we want to put a VLAN 60 as our servers, we leave everything off VLAN 60. And only when we fire up a server and we run the cable to that server, that's when we'll put the port into VLAN 60. So we show that everything in VLAN 60 is exactly a server, and we have no random ports in VLAN 60. And of course, trunk ports open up our attack surface immensely, because trunk ports could theoretically get access to any of our 4,000 VLANs. So we want to make sure that we only use trunk ports when we need, and we configure those trunk ports statically. We don't allow anybody to negotiate trunk ports with us. So there are tons of other security features you will come across. These were just a start that I wanted to cover, because we kind of covered most of them already. I just wanted to consolidate it there. But these tutorials will take you on even more, and usually I use these things as a reference. So if I set up a device, I'll try to just open up this link and do a checklist as I'm going through. So I make sure nothing in my device is open for exploitation, basically. Now, as a last note, every security feature that we implement must take into consideration user impact. For example, if we disable Telnet and leave only SSH on our devices, we need to ensure that all of our users are trained in how to SSH into devices. Similarly, if we shut down all our ports by default, we need to explain to users why we need to do this. In some cases, the trade-off for security may impact an organization too much, and the managers may choose to accept certain risks instead of impacting business operations. So just as an example, if you come into a team, or if you go into a team where no one knows about SSH, or it may not be their fault, it may be that all devices that they use only support Telnet. And if you go in there and you try to disable Telnet on all the devices and try to force SSH, you might lock out all the other engineers. And in that case, the impact of security may be too much. And because of business needs, they may decide, look, we know the risk of Telnet, but we're just going to accept it. Because the alternative means that we just lose too much money, because our users just aren't trained in this right now. So everything that you do in security has to be balanced with a bunch of other needs, with business needs, with networking needs, availability needs, user needs, everything. So I had the hands-on. Usually I do this in class, and I set up 2 physical switches, but you could try to do this on Packet Tracer. So if you want to practice your security, or you want to just brush up on your labbing skills, try to use all the knowledge you've gained during this course and set up 2 switches with the following base configs. So by the end of this course, I'm hoping I could just give you a list of commands, and I could tell you, use this host name, use this domain name, use this switch with your IP, or the management IP as shown on this diagram here. Set up these VLANs. What else we have here? Set up the trunk ports, SSH usernames for everybody, disable all new services. I just given you a checklist, and you know the commands to implement this checklist. So just as a backstory to kind of this, when I started my first networking job a few years ago, this is what I got. I got a big list of requirements, and I got a box of 2 switches. And the aim was By the following week, I had to carry those switches upstairs and plug it into the network. And that's what I did. I didn't get everything correct, but I got enough that I remembered how to do. So I was able to configure, like, the host name and the VLANs and all of these things. So now I use that, and I try to create sort of a realistic expectation for students in the field. So hopefully you could at least read through this and be able to configure most of these services by the end of the course. And this is the diagram for those, well, for the two switches in Packet Tracer. So try to create it and see what you get. So it's no marks or anything, but it's just something really useful for the field. Right, and that's it. So that's the security course there. Just a mini course on brushing up on your Cisco security. And for the next bonus course, NSE2, I'll open it here, but it's basically exactly like NSE1. I saw some students already did it. So you're basically going to log into your Fortinet command, Fortinet account on the site, and look in the library for the NSE2 course. Close that. Whenever it decides to load. Yeah, so just log in back to your account. You should have gotten your NSE1 certificate, and you should have gotten NSE2 opened up to you. So you should have been checked here for NSE1, so you're now officially NSE1 certified, and now you're going to be NSE2 certified. So it's a bit longer. It's just a few more videos to watch, but it's much of the same thing, right? So just go back. Well, you could go to PSMV if you're interested in NSE4. So I mentioned it last class, I believe, or in the lab itself. NSE3 is just sales training. So just skip NSE3. You don't need to do NSE3 to do NSE4. After you do NSE2, you're going to hop straight to NSE4. And the cost of that is 400 US from the last information I saw. So it's kind of expensive. But at least NSE1 and 2 is free, so you can do that now and decide on 4 whenever you need to. I also heard from some students that when they signed up and when they did the 1 and 2, they started getting calls from NSE, well, I guess NSE sales people, asking them if they want to pay for online training for the rest of the courses, for 4 and 5 and 6 and stuff. So you could expect some of that. Don't be afraid to block emails and calls and stuff if they're really bothering you too much. So that's that. So go back to training and log in, and you're going to look for where is it? Yeah, so you're going to look for something like this, and you're just going to press NSE2 and follow the guide. And once you complete it, you'll get NSE2 certificates like this. So read through this slide if you're lost, but basically just logging into your account here and going to library and finding this part and clicking it. So that's NSE2. And the last bonus course is actually going to require some prep work. So I need your help with this. So you see this giant thing in the bonus courses folder is a giant ISO file. So Windows Server 2019, server eval, whatever, 5 gigs. Try to download this if you could. It is a bonus course and it's not directly related to the CCNA. So if you can't download this, if your internet really slow, or if your PC just can't run virtualized stuff or whatever, don't worry too much. I will go through the fundamentals in class. And I put an ebook here in case you want to read up on it as well. So this is, we basically discussed a lot of security stuff, and this bonus course will kind of discuss sysadmin stuff. So if you want to become a system administrator or anywhere into the Windows world, this will kind of be introduction into it. But to actually follow along with the course on Thursday, you need to download this, and I have the you can also start reading up on this. You'll need to download something called a hypervisor. Well, I think we mentioned hypervisors already. So you need to download the VirtualBox hypervisor and run this ISO on it so that you could install Windows Server. But I know this will take too long to wait for you to download this in the next class. So try to download this at least by Thursday. Yeah, and that's it. So on Thursday, we'll go through that Windows Server lab, and I'll invite Shiva, and we'll wrap up the course. Any questions from the start of the class up till now? Now's the time to ask. Anything you want me to discuss or clarify or anything else? And I'll discuss the actually writing the exam in the class on Tuesday as well. So just my tips for when I wrote the exam and how you can get from here into the official Cisco suite.